This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. We got so much to get to today. A lot of Gopher football talk coming up. I'll have Chip Scoggins on in just a little bit to talk extra Gopher football, and I'll have some thoughts at the outset here as well. And I'll get to some Ben Simmons stuff. I haven't talked to Ben Simmons for a while, much to Chris Hines' relief. But I got to bring him up again this week because he has basically said he's not reporting to camp unless he gets a trade. And the Wolves suddenly starting to move up into that conversation in the public perception, in the betting perception, things of that nature. So I need to get to that toward the end of the show as well. But first, what did I miss? You probably stayed up for it. If you didn't, Gophers lose their opener 45-31 to Ohio State. Packed house at the bank, big atmosphere, Fox game, 7 p.m. night kickoff in the rain, all that good stuff. And for a while, it looked like a party. Gophers fell behind early 10-0, but they took a 14-10 lead, had opportunities to do more, and I think that is going to kind of be the theme of my reaction to that game for, as much as that turned out to be a 2-touchdown deficit at the end, for, as much as Ohio State took control in the second half with a lot of big plays, that game was there for them to take control of as well. 14-10, chance to go up 21-10 at the end of the first half. They miss on a big play, one of kind of three pretty critical mistakes by Tanner Morgan, one of which he was absolved of thanks to a penalty, but I thought he played a lot better as the game went on. But certainly three plays of his that stood out to me. One, misfiring on that deep ball down the right side near the end of the first half. They hit on that 21-10 at halftime. Now you're talking something real. Ohio State ends up getting the ball to start the second half, scores a quick touchdown, and even though Minnesota trades scores with them, sort of, Ohio State gets momentum in that regard. Other big play by Tanner Morgan. He throws an interception. There's luckily gets called back because of roughing the passer, but a terrible throw, bad decision into coverage in that case. And then the strip sack for a fumble. Didn't feel the pressure coming. And, that's a fumble return for a touchdown. It was 24-21 at that point. Gophers had the ball. Again, don't know how the game turns out necessarily if that play is different. A lot of things happened in the course of the game, including the injury to Mo Ibrahim. Talk to Chip a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But I thought Tanner Morgan, as good as he played, in the last, 15 minutes of the game, getting them into some scoring situations, getting them back within a touchdown at 38-31, some really good throws. Needed to see a little bit more good decision-making and, hitting on those big plays because he is the guy that they are going to count on absolutely. So I felt like there was a missed opportunity there, even though Ohio State is clearly the more talented team. I think the Gophers are a really good team. I think they've got some good things going for them. Offensive line is totally legit. When they brought in the jumbo package, the seven linemen and the tight end, and just ran it for a touchdown, loved it. They can go big like that, and they can be effective that way. And again, a lot of it's going to depend on Ibrahim, but they've still got some depth there. They've got Morgan. They've got some stuff going on the offense. Now the defense is another story. Work in progress. Ohio State averaged 13 yards per pass play, 7.7 yards per run, had almost 500 yards in the game, scored a bunch of touchdowns over 50 yards. Now the Gophers held the ball for 38 minutes and 41 seconds. That's what they want to do. That's kind of their formula for how they're going to win this year. But because of the big plays, the quick strike from Ohio State, it didn't really matter. Like the Gophers could go hold the ball as long as they wanted. Ohio State got the ball back, and a minute later they had another touchdown. So they've got to get the defense cleaned up. And again, we're opening against Ohio State. When you're inexperienced on defense, trying to figure things out, that's hard. It's a tough way to open. I think, in some ways getting Ohio State now is probably good. I think the offense was fine, over 400 yards, and again, the ball control. But the defense, they're going to have to figure out as the year goes on. Otherwise, this will go from a team that I think has the potential to be really good to just a team that I think could win 6 or 7 games. I still think you look at their schedule, you look at what they've got on this offensive line, you look at some of the other pieces in place. This is still a team that could win 8, maybe even 9 games. I really feel that way about them, that this was the biggest test they're going to get all season. And if they, kind of went toe-to-toe with Ohio State, and even though they gave up the big plays, that game was there for them to take. I feel like this is going to be a season that could turn out to be pretty good. So I guess this game met my minimum expectation of it being close into the fourth quarter, but I can't help but feel a little bit of disappointment for the Gophers because I think they left something out there that was there to be taken.
I'm Chris Hine, Timberwolves beat writer at the Star Tribune and the first 5-time guest in daily delivery history. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast, our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, and even all of Rand's future blog posts about how the Timberwolves should trade for players they will never get, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Joined now on Daily Delivery by Chip Scoggins at TCF Bank Stadium Thursday night to see Ohio State 45, Gophers 31. Chip, it looked good for a while. It looked bad, then it looked good, then it looked bad again. A lot of back and forth in that game. Let's start with your kind of overall opening impressions of what you saw.
Yeah, that's, every time you have a season opener, there's probably overreactions because it's the only thing you go on. And when you play Ohio State with that much skill and speed on offense, they will make you look bad if you're not really good. Ohio State's, you can see why they're a team that if the quarterback gets better and kind of polishes off some of the rough edges, they're going to be a team that's going to compete for the college football playoff. I mean, they just have too many good receivers and running backs. And so what does that say about the Gophers coming out of here? There are things I liked about it. Obviously, there's some concerns in their secondary in terms of overall speed and being able to hang. But here's the thing. They're not going to face another team like Ohio State this year. They're just not. That has that kind of speed and that kind of depth. A lot of people think they have the best offensive line in college football, the second best defensive line. They get the best wide receiver core. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know that anything, and we'll get to this, other than Mohamed Ibrahim's injury that would change my opinion of the Gophers. As I wrote my column, I think they have a chance to be a good team, and I think the Buckeyes have a chance to be a playoff team. And that's the difference in those two teams.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I mean, you fall behind 10-0 early. It looks like there's a danger of, getting run out of the building, even though, you've got the full house, you got people excited. Then then they rally. They go for it on 4th and 1. They get the big play. They get, a couple scores. They get a break with, bad throw by Ohio State's quarterback, the interception, and all of a sudden they're rolling. And I did feel, and I mentioned this at the outset, I felt like there was a point late in the first half where they didn't execute. They could have possibly made it 17 or 21 to 10 at halftime. So I felt like there was a couple points where there were missed opportunities. Like if you're going to beat Ohio State, you got to take advantage of every little thing that you can possibly get.
Yeah, you almost have to play perfect. And the first half there, Tanner takes a second. And even the second half, I think they were up 21-17.
Right.
They have the ball. They get 2 straight penalties on their offensive lineman, a unsportsmanlike, unnecessary roughness, and then a hold. Well, that dooms that drive. Ohio State gets the ball back, 8 seconds, 1 play, big play, touchdown. Gophers come back, they get it. There's the the sack strip fumble return for a touchdown. So it's you have such a small margin of error when you play a team that is that good and that skilled. And if you make a mistake, they're going to pounce on you. And I think the Gophers losing Jordan Howden, their safety really affected their defense. Swinson got put in there, and he's just not fast enough to cover those wide receivers. And you saw some, I don't even know if they're busted coverages more than just guys are better and faster than the Gophers put out there. So the big plays obviously killed them in the second half. But there are things I liked. I love that jumbo package where they use
Me too.
linemen. I mean, that's something that you can carry forward. And, depending on what Mo's injury is, I think Trayson Potts is a nice talent. I don't think he's Mo. I think Mo's a pretty special running back just by how relentless he runs the ball, and he's the heartbeat of that team. So if he's sidelined for a significant amount of time, it's obviously a huge loss. I don't know that means, you fold up the tent. They're going to have a terrible season, but they would have to really get a lot out of Potts if they're going to miss Mo for a while.
Now let's play a clip here. PJ Fleck talked about Mo and his game and the concern about the injury afterward. Let's play that right now. This was PJ Fleck, the head coach, after the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's Mo. That's why I think he's the best back in the country. And whatever it is, I mean, we'll figure it out and we'll row and we'll get better and we'll make sure he's healthy at the point we bring him back. Whatever it is, and hopefully it's nothing major, but we don't know that just yet. But 30 carries, 164 yards. I mean, that's what you expect of Mo, right? That's what all of you expect of Mo. You always ask me 25 to 30 carries. Just unfortunate, kind of got tangled up on a tackle. So,
what was your sense from post game? I mean, we don't know yet what the injury is, but it didn't seem like they were. It just felt like there was a little bit of an uneasiness about how serious it could be, at least, because basically on what happened and how good he is and how much he means to them.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely uneasiness, and I take them at their word that they don't know, the severity of it yet, and they'll need to do more testing. But the fact that he didn't come back tells you it was serious enough that he couldn't come back. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they have confidence in the other guys, but Mose is one of the best running backs in college football, and this is a team that's built on the running game. And so, I mean, he had 30 carries through 3 quarters.
Yes,
that tells you what he means to that offense. And so, yeah, you'd have to recalibrate if he's not there. Again, I think Potts has some talent, but he's not Mo. And I look at that offense, DeLon Wright, he was a bright spot. He was a guy we talked about in camp, and I said going into it that he needs to be the wild card for this offense because we didn't know. I mean, you look at him, he looks like a big-time wide receiver, but and BJ said, every day he did something in practice where he just flashed, but he needed to have the consistency. Well, I think we saw tonight that he has some big play potential. And so you pair him with Chris Ottman-Bell when he comes back from his ankle injury and Daniel Jackson. Now you feel like they have 3 wide receivers that you can go to. And so maybe the offense, if Mo is out, I don't think you radically change who you are. PJ is going to be he's going to want to be a power running team, and that's what they're built on behind that big offensive line. But I think you can open it up more and probably rely on Tanner Morgan in that passing game some.
That's a good transition point to Tanner Morgan. He had a couple of misplays. He got one back with the interception that was called back because of the roughing the passer. Had the strip sack. Thought he looked better as the second half went on, made some big throws on the drive that got them to 38-31. I felt like that was his best drive of the game. Was getting them down the field again, in the end there too, when they could have got it to one score. Bizarre. I don't know how that's not targeting. But that's not the outcome of the game probably isn't determined by that, but that play was strange. But overall perception of Tanner Morgan, how he looked, what they can depend on from him as the year goes on.
I actually thought he played good. The sack strip wasn't his fault. His left tackle just gets beat and he hits him from behind. There were obviously a couple throws. The one would have been an interception. He had the one that was almost an interception where he overthrew Spanford, but it looked like Spanford kind of tripped coming out of it looked like a timing pattern, and Spanford kind of tripped off the line. So that disrupted it. There were a couple drops and, a couple throws that Tanner probably wishes he had back. But by and large, I thought he did a pretty nice job considering you didn't have his number one receiver. You're throwing to, a guy that you haven't played a game with. You practice with, right? But he was, that's their first game action. And so he did look for his tight end some. I thought he managed the game well. And so I thought he had a good game. It wasn't his best game ever, but I don't think he was the reason they lost. I mean, the reason we lost is because Iowa State has very, very fast, very good wide receivers and running backs that were a cut above what the Gophers have on defense.
Yeah, I think they lost because Ohio State had the ball for less than 6 minutes in the second half, but scored 35 points. That was problematic.
Touchdowns of 71 yards, 70 yards, 56 yards, and 60 yards. That's tough. They want to hold the ball. The Gophers had the ball for almost 39 minutes. That was not the problem. That's the blueprint. That was the blueprint.
The problem is they let the guys get behind him. And I think PJ even said that after the game, like that can't happen. Right. And again, it's Ohio State. You're not starting the year with, Louisiana Monroe. I don't even know if it's a team anymore. That's a team they used to play all the time. Like this is not a directional school. This is one of the best teams, best programs in the country. So it still feels like it's disappointing to a certain degree because there was opportunity there, but also you got to be realistic in a certain degree too, that this is a team that's on a different level.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can be disappointed, one, with losing your best player, your running back. That's discouraging, but and this is not about moral victories. It's not about hanging with them and making it a game in the fourth quarter because you're in year 5 of flex tenure. I think it's just about acknowledging that you lost to a better team. Now, figure out what you can carry forward, what you have to get better at. I think they have to address. I said going into the season, I had concerns about their secondary, and that proved again tonight that I think there's some real things that you got to clean up and fix there. I had concerns about their wide receiver core. I feel better about them after tonight. I feel like when you get Ottman Bell back and you have Wright playing the way he did, and I think Jackson's, he's growing. He's going to be a guy you can depend on too. I think you have a pretty good wide receiver core. So I think you answered some things, and some things you probably realize you have some deficiencies in. But I still, after watching this, and I'll couch it with everything, as long as Mo is not gone for the season, or this is something that misses, extended, and we don't know. But if he's in there, I still feel like this is a team that will contend in the West. They played the best team they're going to face this year tonight.
Yeah, that's probably kind of a certain comfort in that. It's not, it's not pleasant when you're, giving up those plays, but you also come out of that game realizing, okay, if you're the Gophers, you were in this game for at least 3 quarters against a team that will be the best team you face this season. And maybe you got a couple breaks along the way, but so did Ohio State. So it's not like it was not lopsided in that regard. This was not a game that felt like you could tell who had more talent, but it wasn't like they were just completely blown away or overmatched.
No. And Ohio State is just, you can't simulate their speed, and they just don't have athletes that can match up with that. But what they do have, and what they do well, is they're a power running team, and that big offensive line, if you use 7 offensive line, if Mo is back and Potts, how will that play against Purdue and Illinois and Northwestern and those teams? So that's what you have to look at. They got to clean up some things, but I don't think, it's one of those situations where you played a Miami of Ohio and really struggled to win, where you're like, how good is this team? They showed some things that I think you can carry forward and feel like they're pretty darn good at.
Better offensive line, the Gophers or the Vikings?
Yeah. It's outside of the sack strip. And I'm and the other thing is, a lot of people think Ohio State has one of the 2 best defensive lines in college football. And so that was a big boy matchup to see kind of where they stacked up. And
they had over 400 yards of offense. Offense wasn't really the problem.
Yeah. So I think you feel good about that. Again, not knowing the status of your running back, but I think there's a lot to build on offensively. Defensively, they've got to figure out the secondary. And I don't know this extent of Howden's injury, how serious that is or what, but his loss, or when he went out of the game, it was definitely noticeable.
Yeah.
And early on, Newman had a really bad angle on the first touchdown run where he just took a bad angle and the guy ran right by him. So they got to clean up some areas defensively, and we'll see kind of what that unit becomes as the season progresses.
We need an Antoine Winfield III. Pretty quick. Chip Scoggins, last thing for you. Appreciate this. We didn't really talk about atmosphere, but this is the first game that they've played in 2 years basically with fans in the stands. It was loud. People seemed enthusiastic about it. Just a certain catharsis. What was it like to be there in your estimation?
Yeah, it was great. It was fun to hear the fans again, and it kind of stinks being up in the press box that we're close to the glass, so you can't hear the full noise, but you could hear them and you could tell it was loud. And kudos to the students. They really showed up. Student section was as good as I've seen in this stadium. I mean, it was packed and full when they were there. And I think they announced over 50,000, and, maybe the rain drove some people away earlier, but it was loud. And you know what? It felt like normal again, right? Being at a sporting event where the crowd is loud and they're into it, and you don't have piped in music. It's authentic noise. It was fun again. As I tweeted during the game, that was a heck of a college football game, and it was a fun environment. And I know Gopher fans are probably disappointed, but it was a fun night to be kind of back and a good kickoff to the season. And we'll see where they go forward from here.
I would agree with that. Chip Scoggins, good stuff. Get some rest. It's a long season, and we'll do this again down the road. Okay.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
Always love talking to Chip about a lot of different things, but college football is at the top of the list. He loves college football. He is into it. He has great insights on it, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chip Scoggins, and I'll talk to him a lot more as the season goes along. Got to shift gears right now, though, to talk a little bit about Ben Simmons. It's my pipe dream. It maybe is the Timberwolves' pipe dream as well. Maybe a little bit more realistic now, though, as the summer goes on, fades into September. Ben Simmons now this week, Philadelphia's Ben Simmons coming off that awful playoffs. Logical conclusion was that maybe he would get traded, but now he's saying, I don't want to come to camp. Trade me before camp starts. I'm not going to report if you don't trade me. So that puts a little bit more pressure on the Philadelphia 76ers, and all of a sudden, if a team hasn't traded for Ben Simmons yet, the Wolves starting to look like maybe they are a team that can be a factor. Just kind of reading into a little bit of the tea leaves, looking at some betting odds. Wagering odds right now didn't used to really involve the Wolves at all when it came to Ben Simmons. Right now, though, they're listed as the second most likely destination for him, right behind Golden State. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but when that happens, that means there's enough public chatter to think this could be something that could happen. And I feel like going and getting Ben Simmons is a no-brainer. I don't care what you necessarily think about what he did in the playoffs this year. I get it. He almost basically single-handedly cost the Philadelphia 76ers that playoff series against Atlanta. But this is a guy who will get you to the playoffs. If Ben Simmons is on the Timberwolves this season, it'll be a guaranteed trip to the playoffs. I honestly believe that. I feel like he is good enough. He is a good enough regular season player that with him and Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards and maybe even D'Angelo Russell, if he's not part of the trade, that would be a team that would be a slam dunk to make the Western Conference playoffs this year and probably into the future too, because all of those guys would be under contract on the roster for several years to come. I don't know what the ceiling of that team is. A lot of that still depends on, is Karl Anthony Towns going to stay healthy? How does this grouping work? How much does Anthony Edwards take a step forward this year? But Ben Simmons absolutely helps you. He absolutely helps a franchise that's been stuck in the mud for almost forever. Absolutely helps a team that still has bad visions of what happened with Jimmy Butler, the last time they traded for a star. Guess what? Ben Simmons is different than Jimmy Butler. He's a little bit less volatile. He's a little bit different point in his career. Probably could use a change of pace where things are a little bit less spotlight rather than more spotlight. I don't think Ben Simmons would roll into the Mall of America and give out his phone number like Jimmy Butler did at his introductory news conference, 4 summers ago. Still remember that. Still sitting there remembering that, trying to frantically dial that number to see if it was real. That's different. Ben Simmons is not Jimmy Butler. Different point in their career. He lines up with Karl Anthony Towns. It lines up with some of the other players they have. So I feel like if the opportunity is there, they absolutely have to pursue it. Now, can they get it done? That's complicated because as we've talked about on this show before with Chris Hine, with other people, trying to get that done probably involves a third team because the pieces going back and forth don't quite line up. So how do you make that work? You got to get another team involved. That gets complicated because then it can fall apart. Any one of those 3 teams can make things fall apart. The compensation changes, something else changes. There's injury, something like that. So still, it's fascinating, though. It bears watching. The Wolves haven't done a ton this offseason. You're still wondering, do they have a big move in them? Is Patrick Beverley and Taurean Prince guys who, can help in certain regards, but, net going in, net going out, doesn't feel like much has changed. Still a team that, as of right now, seems like would be doing well to contend for a play-in spot. And does that really excite you if you're a Wolves fan? Does that really move the needle after so many years of frustration? I don't know if it does. It makes the season more relevant, I guess. But Ben Simmons is a game changer. He's a great defensive player. He gets out in transition. He does everything they want to do. So if the opportunity is there, I'm trying to convince you, you should be excited about it. If it possibly could happen, that would be a great thing for this franchise, and we will see if that really does come to pass in the coming weeks. Let's finish with the cooler. We had Cheryl Reeve, Lynx head coach and general manager, on this show earlier this week, lamenting that Sylvia Fowles had not gotten a WNBA Player of the Week award in a long time. Sylvia Fowles gets WNBA Player of the Month instead, and goes out and backs it up. Has a very nice game. Lynx win again on Thursday night, beating Los Angeles and using defense to do it. Los Angeles only got 4 points, shot 1 of 14 in the fourth quarter. Lynx rally to get that win. It's their fourth in a row. They already clinched a playoff spot, you guys. There's still a lot of season left, but the Lynx have already clinched a playoff spot at 17-9, and a good chance to get at least a single bye. They're sitting in fourth, almost third in the league right now. It's the top 4 teams in the league get at least a first round bye. The top 2 get 2 byes into the semifinals, which are best of 5 series. We'll see if the Lynx can get that far, but for right now, even with a lot of players injured, Leisha Clarendon out right now. Fowles had missed a game. She's back. Damaris Dantas out for the season. A lot of things they got to figure out offensively, but defensively, getting the job done and continuing to win. 17-9, 4 wins in a row, 17-5 since that 0-4 start. So Cheryl Reeve and her team continuing to get things done, even with adversity striking them. That'll do it for today and for this week. Probably not going to do a show on Monday. It is Labor Day, but there will be a couple bonus shows dropping over the weekend from State Fair stuff. Lindsay Whalen and Kent Youngblood joined me out at the fair earlier this week, as did Chris Finch, the Wolves head coach, and Chris Hine, Timberwolves basketball beat writer. So I'll post those sometime over the weekend to kind of get us through the long weekend, and we'll be back at it with regular shows on Tuesday. Thanks for joining me all week here on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Have a great weekend, a long weekend, a safe one, and we'll see you again on Tuesday.